Ladies and gentlemen, before the start of deliberations on today's topic, let me have the privilege as the President of NISSMAT to introduce this international institution. Established in 1990, it has now become a think tank organization with association of more than 90 experts and scholars on various subjects who provide inputs to us. Our forum has conducted a number of webinars and interactive sessions which have received massive response. I am sure our session today would be of great interest to you all. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the listeners on this group. On behalf of NISSMAT, that is National Institute of Safety, Security Management and Applied Technology, I welcome you all this morning for an important discussion that we have on terrorism in Jammu Division, its causes and remedies. For this, we have two very distinguished speakers. One is Dr. Ajai Sahni. He is the Executive Director of the Institute of Conflict Management. He has also worked on South Asian Terrorism Portal and Khalistan Extremism Monitor. He is the publisher and auditor of the South Asian Intelligence Review and the Project Director of Impact. He has been taking part in a large number of discussions at the Institute, as well as on the media. Welcome, Dr. Sahni.
Thank you, sir.
The second speaker is General Dhruv Katoch. He is an alumni of the Sherwood College of Nainital, the National Defense Academy, the Indian Military Academy, and the National Defense College. He is MPhil and Doctor from the Madras University, and has also been conferred the Indira Gandhi University Doctor of Philosophy from the Indira Gandhi University, Rewari. Close to 40 years of distinguished service in the army. He was awarded the VSM and Sena Medal and the VSM. He has taken part in all, he has operated in all the border areas and also during Pavan in Sri Lanka. After retirement, he joined the Center for Land Warfare Studies and was the director there. Presently, he is with the India Foundation. Welcome you both for this discussion that we had.
Thank you.
We have, insurgency has been going on in JNK for quite some time. Last time we discussed the aspect related to the valley in particular with the terrorist force which has come up there. But we will not restrict to that. We are now going to restrict ourselves only to the Jammu Division, where since 9th of June, there have been 7 attacks by the terrorists. There have been attacks in the Rajouri sector. There have been attacks in Hiranagar side. So we have suffered casualties in all these attacks. And also that we have also the terrorists also, 3 terrorists have been killed in this area. Now, I'll start with Dr. Sahni to say, what is the change which has taken place between terrorism in the valley vis-a-vis which has come into the Doda sector now?
You see, I think it is a complete misconception to assess this entire situation as some kind of a dramatic or unprecedented escalation. First of all, please, there is this idea in the general commentary in the media that Jammu has never had a problem of terrorism, which is, of course, for anyone who's familiar with the facts, absurd. I mean, Jammu had, I think, more than 1,800 fatalities in 2001. There was a year, 2002, in which it had more fatalities than you had in the valley. Now, after 2010, from 2011 onwards, there were massive operations in Jammu. the region was substantially freed of terrorism, substantially freed. But there is not a single year in which you do not have fatalities in Jammu. They vary. They go up to 40, they come up to 59 last year. They go down to, I think, 12 in 2017. But it's a fluctuating thing. It's real. Now, when we had 59 fatalities last year, the government was talking about withdrawal of forces from Jammu.
Yes.
So you must understand the entire irrationality of the discourse. It's not just irrationality of the media discourse. It is an irrationality of the policy discourse as well. Even today, Kashmir has substantially larger numbers of fatalities than Jammu. There are 40 fatalities in Kashmir till date and 27 till date in the Jammu region. So it's not as if it's shifted out. There is a difference, of course, that in Kashmir we've had only 4 terrorist fatalities. Only 4 security force fatalities, whereas in the Jammu division we've had 12. So that is problematic. Just because you have had the problem, I think, is that you've had this large number, you have a cluster of incidents. Now, this is, as far as I see, not any kind of a trend of escalation. It is a random cluster. These things happen. You are squeezing Kashmir very strongly. More and more terrorists are, the proportion of terrorists being killed in Kashmir is overwhelming, whereas here you had security force personnel killed. So that is what has led to this abrupt focus on Jammu.
Okay.
Nothing has radically changed there. And I would just like to add one more thing, that last year when 59 people were killed in the Jammu region, the government was talking about withdrawal of force. I mean, how are you now saying that this has all gone out of control?
Right. Dhruv, can I have your views on this issue, please?
Thank you. Thank you, DK. Before I give you, there is something I want to talk a little bit about the historical context in the sentence, and then I'll get back to the subject proper. You know, there is this belief that the India-Pakistan relationship is held hostage to the Jammu and Kashmir issue. I have never believed that to be so. The problem in the Indo-Pak relationship is really ideological. And it is this ideological fissures between the two countries which prevents any sort of resolution coming about. J&K is simply a symptom. It is being exploited under the larger umbrella of that, the ideological difference. And that ideological difference is not going to go away. So I think we are destined for perpetual hostility between India and Pakistan till something dramatically changes the status quo. So anybody who thinks that there can be peace and there can be brotherhood and all that is living in a dream world. It is not going to happen. It has not happened despite everything which we have done since independence. And now there is a course change since 2014. Let us see what this brings about over the next decade or 2 decades or so. Because it is my belief that if we have, there is no way in which India and Pakistan can live as friends. But can we accept the fact that we will be enemies, and then can we find a modus vivendi to sort of live within that ambit? Now, Dr. Sahni has made a very valid point, you see. Problems have continued in Jammu also for a very long period of time.
Yes.
Now, there is something in our very genes, or possibly in the Indian gene, both the political and the military mind, that you want to declare victory a little bit early. You see, you haven't achieved victory. Firstly, we haven't been able to define victory. What exactly do you mean by victory? And without that definition, you go in for a withdrawal of forces from the Jammu Division, which I think which is not a correct decision. And everybody said, no, Jammu, it's got a majority Hindu population and all that. But you see, people haven't even realized the population mix. When you're looking at the border areas, there are largely Muslim inhabited areas. And there are, it is very close to the border. So when you start thinking that, no, it is an area which won't have, which won't have any element of radicalized youth, I think we are living in a dream world. It doesn't happen that way. You're looking at Rajori, you're going to Poonch, you're looking at that entire Doda belt. Please have a look at the population matrix. It doesn't work out that way. So
But I thought Doda area has demography is 50% Hindus and 50% Muslims.
Absolutely. I'm not denying that. But when you're looking at a majority, you're looking at say about 80 to 90%. It doesn't work that way in the Jammu division. You see, in Kashmir, when you're looking at Kashmir, it is practically 100% Muslim now after the Hindus have been driven out, right? But in Jammu, there has been no exodus of any type of people. So that population remains the same as what it was percentage-wise. There may be a slight variation since the last few decades, right? But to presume that there is any population devoid of Muslims, it doesn't really work there. So, especially in the remote border areas, and it is those areas which really, where there will be some people. I'm not talking about the masses. If there is mass support, there is problems. There is that a very small percentage of people who are radicalized or for any other reason, for fear, for any other reason, they extend that support to them.
At the macro level, would it be prudent to state or think that the spurt of insurgency which is now taking place both in the valley as well as in Jammu Division could be attributed to the proposed election in the month of September to thwart it?
No, you're right. You see, the way I've looked at it is there were two. One is in the world opinion. When you're looking at the world stage, the global stage, Pakistan stands isolated diplomatically and politically to a very large extent. You see, and that has been a success of the Indian policy over the last decade. That cannot be denied. Now they want to get Kashmir back into relevance. They want to and they're desperate for that. So they tried it in the Kashmir division. The earlier support which they would get, and this is an important point. This is my own analysis. There was a nexus. You had a person called Gilani there who couldn't win the elections,
yes,
but who was very, very powerful as a political leader. And even to get any form of government job in the Kashmir division, you required a chit from Gilani. There's adequate evidence to support my statement. Now, we found that nexus was there between Gilani and the political parties, the two major political parties there, and between Gilani and the Pakistani establishment. So, in a sense, you had an indirect nexus between the Pakistani establishment and the political parties, the Abdullahs and the Mufti parties. The two family-based parties with the Pakistanis. So that indirect linkages are there. And what the abrogation of 370 did was, it was the first step in breaking those linkages. Now, those linkages kept on getting weaker and weaker, and now they're substantially weakened. But the point is, they can reappear again. And the way the operations are being structured in the Kashmir division, the shift took place towards the south of the Pir Panjal.
Yeah.
And that is what we see. Now, there is also... I don't really believe what the person is saying, but there is one of the commentators, a Pakistani commentator who's living in, he's not living in Pakistan. He belongs to Gilgit-Baltistan, I think. And he's saying that about 600 odd people had come from the Pakistani special forces inside. Yes. I don't give any credit. I don't give much credence to that. But I do give credence to the fact that the operations which have taken place, there have been personnel from the Pakistan military involved in that. Right? But to talk of 600, I think it is a very big number. And it also shows, as in a sense, a desperation. Because what happened was when we withdrew our forces, and you took out 2 brigades, I think, from there, and you send them to the east on the Chinese border in eastern Ladakh. Now, once that those gaps weren't filled, and once a vacuum comes up, it isn't instantaneous that a vacuum has come up and somebody will move in inside. I think it has taken the Pakistanis 2 years or 3 years since then to fill up the gap and to start operating again. It is not easy to start operating even for the Pakistanis. But they have done it now. We'll break it now, and again, we'll get back to the status quo. So that the operation, I think, what Pakistan has been able to do, now they will be countered. But then, we have suffered very heavy casualties. I do not think that same trend is going to continue. In my view, I think it is over. But to state that there'll be no further operations from the Pakistani side, no, they will continue. Regardless of what we do, there will be times when they will be able to hit successfully. For us, there are many initiatives which are required, but I'll get to that in the subsequent steps.
Okay. Dr. Sahni had very correctly mentioned that apparently over a period of time, this area has been devoid of the security grid because there were no major incidents taking place in the Jammu Division per se. And now, if you see all the operations which are going on by the terrorists, they are not anywhere close to the habitation. Like we had the British Defense Force, which was trained. They did a commendable job. All these chaps who are operating now from across the border, they are in the high reaches. They are in the high reaches where the population is very small. Migrant population from the plains, which have come up with their cattle up there for the grazing of the cattle, they probably may getting some support from them or by intimidation of the population to give them the logistic support. Would that be correct to state that way?
There are a couple of things I'd like to sort of perhaps introduce a slightly discordant note. General Mehta, you said that there is this, I'm using a different word, I think a spike or surge in terrorism in Jammu. There isn't, or in Jammu and Kashmir. There isn't. Last year, we had 134 fatalities in Jammu and Kashmir. This year, we are right into the 8th month. We have a total of 67, 27 in Jammu, 40 in Kashmir. There is no surge. Okay? This is, you could say, this is a minimal, maintainable level of terrorism. It will keep shifting its patterns and locations. But this is something, as long as Pakistan has intent and purpose, and they continue, as General Katoch is saying, they're going to carry on with their mischief. There is a certain minimum that they can have a shifting sort of focus. I agree completely with General Katoch that this is not going to be a trend in Jammu. This is going to be contained. You may take a few more hits. The other thing you must understand is that even in Jammu, entirely in Kashmir, but even in Jammu, an overwhelming number of fatalities that have been taken by the forces are in security force initiated operations. General Katoch will probably talk about the details of the terrain over there, which makes it so difficult to operate, especially if your numbers are small. The second point of discordance that I'd like to introduce is that I do not think Article 370 or the abrogation of Article 370 has absolutely anything to do with the situation. Nothing at all.
Okay.
It is, in fact, the security forces who have actually the numbers of fatalities rose briefly after 370 was abrogated, and then the security forces have re-established their dominance over there. So we need to separate some of our personal prejudices and look at the facts over there. This is a narrative that is being forced by the government, and we must also understand that there is tremendous policy failure here, not only about Jammu Kashmir, where a policy of communal polarization is being pursued. There's been gerrymandering in the electoral demarcation for the general elections. There is a great deal of popular resentment. This has not translated into terrorism. I would like to add that overwhelmingly in the Jammu region, the reports indicate that all the operations are being done by people who have crossed over from the other side. Now, what has also happened as a result of the dilution of the grid is that your intelligence flows have also diminished.
Yes, that's an important factor.
There has also been a dilution of the VDC structures, the Village Defense Committee structures. Fewer and fewer new recruits are not being taken in. So you've had flows of information from the village level not coming in with the same, shall we say, coherence and frequency that you had in the past. These are weaknesses that need to be addressed. Now, on policy failures, I would like to suggest that, yes, part of the problem was China's mischief on the border, which forced us to withdraw a certain quantum of force. Part was the incorrect assessment that Jammu is now free of terrorism, so we don't need force over there. But a third element that you must look at is the weakening of the Indian armed forces. Close to 180,000 strength of the Indian Army has been decreased since COVID, partly because of 2 years of non-recruitment, thereafter because of this ill-conceived Agnipath scheme. So we are completely absorbed with an externally imposed argument that we don't need such a large army. Who says we don't need such a large army? Is this a strategic assessment? Or is it Oh, but America is reducing its force, so we can also reduce our force. China is reducing its force, so we can also. China doesn't have multiple insurgencies in the country.
Yes.
Your force strength has to be defined by your challenges, by your technological capabilities and competencies. We are talking about a 2.5 front war that we have to prepare for. Do we have the force required? America is reducing its force numbers. Look at the hash that America has made in every theater of counterinsurgency. They have the best technologies in the world, and they fail every time. Why?
Yeah,
Because
that's
we
right.
do not have the right numbers. So this blind acceptance of received wisdom, which gets translated into policy in this country. And what are we trying to do? Oh, we don't have money to pay pensions. We don't have money to have such a large army. We need it for. Why have you continuously reduced the defense budget? In real terms, because of the inflationary pressures, and in terms of GDP proportion. We are down to 1.9%. There was a time when India was spending 4.25%. And for decades, between 3 and 4.25% of GDP.
I agree
Were
with
we
you.
not a poor
There
country then?
certain,
We are now supposed to be world leaders. Sorry.
Post levels have been reduced in this area. Dhruv, since you were in a very senior appointment looking into this area, what do you feel is the terrain helping the terrorists in this area in terms of the terrain factor in particular?
You see, when you're looking at, there are many places here where the road is going, and you cannot position troops everywhere. So let us say you've got 1 million strong army and you put all of them there, even that is not enough. Because there will always be a spot by which you can actually take on a person. Now, what the army would do earlier was that if we had to move from point A to point B, we had the standard road opening drills. The road would be open and then the convoy would go through very comfortably and all that. So now, once peace settled in, I think those for movement of individual, like 2 or 3 vehicles or 4 vehicles, there was no ROP. I mean, the vehicles would just move. And, they would go wherever they had to go, and there was no problems. Now, it is on the movement of isolated vehicles. I'm not talking about a single vehicle. I'm talking about a move of, say, 1 or 2 vehicles. When they go, and over a period of time, intelligence by the hostiles is developed like, okay, this particular, at some point of time, on this track, a vehicle movement takes place. Now it is very easy to position somebody there with a rifle and, take a pot shot. You get lucky, you hit the person and, you've taken 2 or 3 casualties. You hit the headlines.
Yeah.
In a real sense, that is what has happened now. In a real sense, that is exactly what has happened now, that they have been able to carry out these ambushes. Now, once, of course, they've carried out these ambushes, we are alert and it won't happen again. But the point was, it did occur, and so to that extent, there was a loss. But there are 2 things which I must, with Dr. Sahni, he's made a statement, and though it's outside this topic, but I think I'll give my side of it. The question of 370 going was really the linkages. It has got nothing to do with the fighting the insurgency. You broke those political linkages, which were very, very strong. I know it. I've seen it. So I'm not going to even question it. I've seen it practically. I know what is happening on the ground. And once those linkages got broken, it has become much more difficult now for those people to carry out operations. My sole point in this is, if you have not done it, regardless of the amount of people you put from the army side, you put in 1,000 or 100,000 troops, you will not get a solution. We are better off now than what it was otherwise. And as far as Agnipath is concerned, you see, regardless of what that scheme is, some people like it, some people don't. I don't want to get to that. It has not affected the operations in Jammu and Kashmir. Take it from me. I've got all the commanding officers and company commanders and youngsters and Jawans. I'm in touch with them even today. They come to my house, I go there, I meet them. That has not affected it. What affected was the withdrawal of complete formations. You see, the formations have moved out. Now, once that formation moved out, 100, 200 square kilometers became vacant.
That's right.
Now, that was not filled up. No, that became a problem. And because that didn't get filled up over a period of time, well, the problem is there. So it's got nothing. The problem there has got nothing to do with the Agnipath scheme, right? And the resolution will take time, but it will happen. So I don't want to get involved in that, but I thought, that, if people think that because we've got Agnipath and, the troops are less and that is why. The troops are not less because of Agnipath or the Agnipath scheme. The troops are less because the formations were de-inducted from there. And that is where the problem lies. As I told you, DK, just one sentence, for God's sake, do not declare victory unless you have defined victory. So they defined victory. They said, okay, today is peace, and you withdraw them. I think that is a very retrograde decision because there is tremendous pressure, for everybody to say, okay, we have done well. You have to resist that pressure and continue with it till victory is actually achieved. Or as they say in cricket, till the last ball is balled.
Why I raise this question of terrain is I've operated both in the Kashmir Valley as well as in this area. The movement in Kashmir Valley being an open area is better, whereas this area, be it Doda, Kishtwar, Vadarwa, is highly mountainous, very thick vegetation, very few roads and road communication. So I think operating in this area is much more difficult for the troops as compared to the Kashmir Valley. What do you have to say for that?
No, I totally agree, because every time I have traveled in that area myself, there are, every single place is a place where you can be ambushed.
Yes.
So the question is that once you got your, if you got troops in that area which can react in a very quick time frame, then there is a deterrence to the terrorist groups. They know that, okay, if you open fire, we can be surrounded. Now, when the area is devoid of troops, that fellow knows that he can hit and get away.
Correct.
And that's really what they have done. You see, once he has shot, and then we say that, okay, we have, you can't encircle those people. That is not possible. The terrain is such. So if you cannot react in a very, very quick time frame, that person will get away. We'll get him later. That's of course, within a week, 2 weeks, a month or sometime, we'll get him. But for that point of time, it will be very difficult to say that, okay, we'll get him, because he's firing first. He's hidden, he's under cover. We don't know where he is. And that chap is going to open fire. There'll be 3-4 rifles or machine guns opening at you. And we will get some casualty. By the time we react, that chap is gone. So that is the challenge.
The terrain is in their favor to.
Yes.
Now, what Dr. Sahni had mentioned, less of grid, counterinsurgency grid. These fellows apparently they couldn't have carried that much ammunition with them, the way they are hitting their camps. Over a period of time, because of the void in the force level there, would it be prudent to say that they have made some caches where they stock the ammunition, and from caches in terms of caves, they have a lot of caves there, large hideouts from which they can operate? Would it be correct though?
No, absolutely. I've actually seen those caches which they have made there. Those where the caves and the stuff has been stacked. So that is a standard operating procedure. Whether even if the army was deployed, they can do that. So for a bunch of villagers to get together, you put something in a pouch and take it to a sort of a cave and hide it there. It is practically impossible to detect. So those sort of activities can carry on even otherwise. But the question is, if that person is there and he starts opening fire, right? And we are not in a position to get him in a very, very quick time frame because of the troops being denuded. That becomes a challenge. That is being addressed now. But you see, why this thing has got prominence is because there was a series of incidents in a month where the military bought casualties. The military generally doesn't buy casualties. We give casualties. This time it was reversed. And that was, and it was very rightly an area of concern for the nation, and very rightly an area of concern for the army.
Dr. Sahni, what you mentioned was the dilution in the intelligence setup there. Because there would be a large number of underground workers who are supporting these fellows. Or the chaps who are operating, the terrorists are operating, they're intimidating the local population with dire consequences. I think there is a definite requirement to increase our surveillance grid in that area, both human as well as technological.
You see, you must understand, first of all, it's not as if they have we haven't seen too many arrests of overground workers and all. There were arrests and then the people were released because it was found that they weren't really supporting. The support base is still fairly small. Now, these are very, very, General Katoch also mentioned, very dispersed populations, very small settlements, habitations.
Correct.
These people are, number one, vulnerable on a multiplicity of planes. They're very poor. There is an extremely impoverished belt. So people will give you services for a combination of intimidation and money.
Yes.
They will help, they will guide you, they will take it. Now, one of the consequences, you can't have a separate intelligence. This is a vast area. I mean, the undivided Doda region was 3/4 of the valley, if you
That's right.
recall. Now it's more than, I think, still more than half the valley. The Jammu region is vast, comparatively speaking. You can't have an intelligence network over here, human intelligence network over here, unless you have a fairly well-established distribution of your army and security forces. You have, in other words, you have to restore the grid. And the grid has to be linked with a fairly revitalized village defense infrastructure. It is only when you have a restoration of these that the intelligence flows will recommence. Also, if a population feels in some sense alienated, you will see, I understand that the human intelligence flows, even in Kashmir today, are much lower than they used to be.
Yes.
It is largely technical intelligence that is feeding the operations in Kashmir as well. Now, technical intelligence is something against which the adversary, particularly people who are crossing over from the other side of the border, are able to protect against. They adopt patterns of communication which are not susceptible to technical surveillance. So you need a human intelligence
Very
capacity.
important.
That human intelligence capacity is a secondary or an adventitious capacity to the larger military security force capacity or the grid present in the area.
As far as the technical intelligence is concerned, there are reports to say that these fellows are operating there. They're using satellite communication systems, which is difficult to monitor. So had they been using these mobile phones, they can be monitored. I do not know we have the adequate capability now. I'm sure it will build up to monitor the satellite communication systems which these fellows are using.
May I just intervene here momentarily, sir? You know, this is a continuous process of adjustment to each other's capabilities and capacities. You will find a solution to a problem, they will create another problem. It's what they call the technology treadmill. You have to keep running to stay in the same place. If you stop even for a moment you get thrown off the treadmill. So it's like that. You will change, they will change. It's nobody's giving up on either side. In fact, let's be very, very clear. As I said earlier, this is a kind of a minimal, sustainable level of terrorism that we will see continuing in Jammu and Kashmir indefinitely, unless the problem is resolved. And the problem is not so much Jammu and Kashmir, the problem is Pakistan.
Yes.
As long as the Pakistani as long as the Pakistani intent does not change, this is a level of violence that can be sustained for many years to come. Yes, we have defeated terrorism on our own soil, despite Pakistani support, despite external support in the northeast as well for multiple insurgencies, in Punjab, on the western border. So it can be done, but Kashmir is a very different issue in terms of Pakistan's commitment. Also understand Pakistan's capabilities have diminished enormously. They are not, the people keep talking about we can't have a solution for Kashmir. I have constantly reiterated, the solution is already in play. We are resolved. When you bring an insurgency down from 3,500, 4,000 fatalities a year to 120, 130 fatalities a year, you are resolving the problem. I use this analogy in one place. We have cured a cancer, and everybody is saying, oh, we have failed because we still have a common cold. What we have comparatively is a very small problem. This is a time for political outreach, not with Pakistan, with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. If the people of Jammu and Kashmir are compromised, if their loyalties are in doubt, well, that's in the entire Northeast. When we, a couple of decades ago, used to say, you went there, they said, oh, you are from India. Go there today, you don't see this mindset. So if we have to address this mindset.
Yeah.
And this mindset has to be addressed by politics. And it has to be addressed not by proxy politicians of the center. It has to be addressed by the local politicians. And abusing the local politicians and saying that they are all compromised. Well, if they were all compromised and if they were all in bed with the terrorists, why was the Bharatiya Janata Party in bed with them? You've had coalition after coalition with the NC, with the PDP. So if they're such terrible people, why were you having coalitions with them? So let's understand one thing. There is a lot of politicization in this discourse. We will eventually have to deal with the politicians of the area who are able to secure popular votes. We have already seen the results of the general elections. These have to be factored into our policies. And we need an outreach. Once the people accept, I am not saying that they will abruptly change their loyalties, they will give up on the entire idea of Azad Kashmir or whatever they want to call it. But once they accept that this way of terrorism is simply not serving, and most of them have already accepted that terrorism is not serving their interests, that Pakistan is not serving their interests. They may not have joined the flag waving Indian nation, but there is a transformation on the ground which we need to, if nothing else, there is a security transformation on the ground. The security forces have done their job. Their job is not to solve the problem. Their job is to contain violence. They have contained violence to a level which, to my mind, within the context of Jammu and Kashmir and the violence that we saw over there, is negligible. I use this word advisedly. Every single death is a tragedy. But compared to the 3,000 and 4,000 that were being killed earlier, what is happening today is an extremely limited. And even within this, if you see the Jammu Division, most of the people being killed are terrorists. So please understand, this needs to be taken with a calm mind, without political polarization, without communal polarization. And we must understand security forces have done their job. It's now a political issue.
Yes, I think the security forces have been integrated now, which has taken quite some time between the CAPF, the security for the army, and all these agencies have been integrated now, and they're working in consonance with each other. But I still feel that, you see, as far as the infiltration of the line of control is concerned, is well under check. But these fellows who are operating in Jammu Division, they have come from across the border, the IB. I think we need to ginger up our security system along the IB. What do you say on this, Dhruv?
No, I think we really don't have evidence as of now whether they've come across the IB or across the LC. As of now, I don't have the evidence, and unless you actually catch a chap and find out, we don't know. It is possible. Both are possible. But you see, the problem still lies. It's ultimately the way I've looked at it is, when you catch hold of these terrorists, there's 3 or 4 people here, 10 people there, and 20 here, and you kill all of them. And another 20 come and we kill them, another 20 come, we kill them. These are simply pawns. It doesn't matter how bravely that pawn fights, he's still a pawn. He can move one piece ahead. The head of the serpent, it lies in Pindi. And we have done, we need to address that, the core. You address that support Caesars, Jammu and Kashmir will be peaceful. Without that, it will never be peaceful. These incidences will carry on and carry on. We'll suppress it. Okay, as Dr. Sahni is very rightly brought up, from 1,000 casualties, we've come down to 50, 60. We do it even better, we come down to 20. But to come down to 0 and to say that, okay, nobody will, even the police won't carry weapons there. You'll just be with your old danda wala jo aa jayega. That state is not going to come till you address the problem. Now, how that is to be addressed, there are it is not the subject of this talk. That is something different. That can be addressed.
We'll discuss
But-
this later sometime.
But that needs to be addressed, and I think that's a very important point. As far as this infiltration is concerned, we'll, DK, I'll put it across to you this way. At my age today, let Pakistan put any number of fences, I'll get through. That is the point.
Absolutely.
You get through.
Absolutely.
A small group of people. Here is
Valid point.
the entire Pakistan army is there, and they want to send across a small group of 5 or 6 people. Come on, they can do it. The Berlin Wall couldn't stop people. The American defense can't stop people. And, they've got the latest of technology. A small group will always get through. It is impossible
Absolutely.
to stop. Anyway, they come through, we'll sort them out. But I told you, they are the pawns. These pawns, 10 come, we kill them and all. And everybody who has come in, please take it from me. His time has started. The ulti gilti jisko bolte hain, he will be eliminated. It's over. It's a matter of time, but he will be killed.
Yes.
How do you make it so expensive for the Pakistan army that their chief says, okay, I can't take it anymore. Once that stage comes, then you will have peace. Otherwise, I don't see it happening as of now.
In the present day scenario, the input I get from the valley is the surveillance system, the intelligence system, human in particular, what Dr. Sahni was mentioning, has become very potent, in a sense that bulk of the overground and underground workers have been identified and that they action taken against them. I feel that in this area also, over a period of time, it can't be done overnight. We have to identify the support system what these chaps have and take action against them. For example, on this the attack on the bus of pilgrims on the 9th of June, there's a chap from Rajouri who has been caught. These chaps, the terrorists, had come and stayed in his house. He was the chap who guided them onto the ambush site, and he was the person who got them out of that place. So I think it's imperative now, we keep it at the tactical level, the operational level. I think we need to identify the overground and underground workers and take action against them. But it will take time. It can't be done overnight.
May I just intervene here, sir, that this is already being done. One of the very strong things that has happened over the past years, first of all, is that action has also been taken against very high-profile individuals who were well known to be supporters of the insurgency, who were well-known channels of funding to the terrorists, and nobody touched them for decades and decades, including the family members of Mr. Gilani, who General Katoch mentioned. Now, this was a peculiar, say appeasement, say a peculiar failure of a particular mindset. You cannot say that I will allow a certain set of people to be outside the scope of your laws and your responses to the support to terrorism. And I think that decision has been taken. I think the overground workers are very well identified. I think most of them, there will be few. I think the very important thing to recognize is also that the whole idea of the hybrid terrorist, as they spoke of these youngsters who would just be picked out of nowhere and sent out for an operation, that is also more or less terminated for the simple reason that it was far too expensive in terms of life and far too unproductive in terms of operational success. You kill one man and your life is over. So I don't think they've been able to replenish or create a stream of continuous hybrid terrorists. And that is why we also have, this is the squeeze on Valley has pushed terrorism a little into the Jammu region. Also, the fact that Jammu has always been a very major route for infiltration. Has been.
Yes.
There is still, we see at least occasionally people being killed while crossing the border. So there is a continuous effort of infiltration even today. So they are attacking over there because they are not being able to generate the local, at one point of time, there used to be a continuous thing that there are about 100, 120, 130 terrorists in Kashmir. And every year the number remained the same, though 100 terrorists were 70, 80, 90 terrorists were being
70,
killed
80
every year.
saying this area.
You know, so there was a continuous process of replenishment. Today, your assessments have come down to 40 to 50.
Yes.
So, because you don't have it, you know, as I said, this is a process of continuous adaptation to one another's successes and failures. The degree to which you are succeeding is going to push them into trying to invent new methods, and hence the drones, and hence the you know, whatever the shift or what intensification, or at least the cluster of incidents. I don't even call it a trend. It's a cluster of incidents that have occurred in Jammu, and as General Katoch has said repeatedly, this will be taken care of. It's only a question of readjusting your own strategic and tactical perspectives, and the forces will dominate this area once again in a very short time. In very short time.
Right. I think, Dhruv, any points from your side? We are running
No.
out of time now.
No, I think I'm totally with Dr. Sahni there. The forces will take care of it, right? But if anybody is in a delusion that the problem is going to go away, it's not going to happen. These incidents will keep taking place. And I absolutely get amazed when people, you know, make such statements on TV that, you know, that there'll be total peace and calm and all that. It doesn't happen that way. That total peace and calm will come when external support to the problem ceases. That is important. Once that comes, the rest will take care, and then we can have total peace. But otherwise, incidences will take place, and we will continue to handle them militarily and politically as well. DK.
You see, today's report, which I got from somewhere, is that this J&K government has activated the village defense force with better weapons. So, yeah, apparently earlier they were using the bolt action, or they must have given some semi-automatic weapons. And I was hearing to some people of this village defense force talking, okay, we are now fully geared, we will not let these steps come up. So it implies that keep these fellows away from the habitation, let them wither off the wild, and certain areas which are devoid of population, where if they can get the sustenance, keep it under surveillance. For example, the Doks, where the Gujars are grazing the cattle, the Doks, you know, these sort of secluded areas, they need to be kept under surveillance, be it human intelligence or by some other means. I have nothing else to say. Anything, Dr. Sahni, sir?
No, I think we've gone through a whole lot of things. And I think we should recognize very clearly that the problem in Jammu and Kashmir has been substantially contained. This whole idea that 3 people or 5 people or 12 people get killed somewhere and we are back into the 1990s, this discourse is absurd and should be repeatedly exposed as being absurd.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Sahni.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. A very illuminating talk that we've had. I've learned a lot from the two of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.